The interesting thing about this series of subpoenas, it's the first time that Eric Adams himself has been subpoenaed by the grand jury. That is big, which means he is the target of the investigation. He always has been, but this solidifies that. The fact that we're only finding out about it now, a month later, is indicative of something. I'll get into it momentarily. But Eric Adams cannot go before a grand jury. He will be eviscerated. Recently, he was asked a simple question by the press corps. He only stands before the press corps once a week. He prepares for that because it's very difficult for him to handle the press 7 days a week. God forbid he have to answer their questions. Simple question. How many times, Eric Adams, did you go to Red China, mainland China?
I don't recall how many times. My first trip, I don't even think I was the elected official when Tracy and I went on a vacation. So I don't recall the exact number of times that I traveled there. I'm not sure. I don't recall the exact number of times.
I mean, he could look at his passport, right?
Of course you can.
Yeah, there you go.
But he's been there so many times to collect the red Chinese money and bring it back in satchels.
Yeah, you tend to forget.
With his Asian assistant, Winnie Greco, who, remember, has had both her homes up in the Bronx raided by the FBI.
Although I think she's still on payroll somehow.
Yes, she is, because you got to keep everyone close to you.
Yeah, keep them getting the money.
And her business office at the World Mall in Flushing. And there's no doubt they came up with a lot of fortune cookies when they raided her 3 locations. No doubt about it. But just there, his inability to answer a question, because then the ADA, and remember in the grand jury, you don't have your attorneys there. You don't have your attorneys there. It's just you, the ADA, and the grand jury, which could be anywhere from 18 to 22, 24 people. And the ADA already knows how many times he went to Red China, and will say, Mr. Adams, isn't it true that you traveled to mainland China since you were state senator and then borough president and mayor a total of 13 times?
Oh, that's a lot.
Well, they know how many times because Winnie Greco always accompanied him.
Oh, that's right.
So they have all of her records. So you see, he can't hesitate. He can't fudge. And he can't implicate himself or his many crooked colleagues, because if he does so, all of that material gets leaked from the grand jury hearings. And he can't take the Fifth Amendment, because even though the Fifth Amendment was created as part of the Bill of Rights, I believe it was in 1787 by Madison, anytime anybody takes the Fifth Amendment, there's the implication that you're guilty. That's why you're taking even though you have a right to take it.
It doesn't look good. Yeah,
especially when you're a politician. And let me explain the gravity of this. There was a man in 1973 I knew well. Unlike Eric Adams, who was a house mouse for 22 years, spent all of his time in precincts, only made 4 collars in 22 years. He's always told, I put a bulletproof vest on every day. Yeah, right. There was Mario Biaggi. Mario Biaggi was the most decorated police officer in the history of the NYPD. He had shootouts with thugs. He was injured 11 times. He had to kill 2 suspects, many of them with organized crime. The most decorated police officer. Went on to run for Congress up in Throgs Neck, where he was like a deity god. Sometimes he won elections 90% of the vote. 90%. And that had been a Republican area. He won for the Democrats a Republican area. He was on his way to becoming mayor. 1973, it was the time of the 4 Bs running in the Democratic primary. There was A. Beam, the accountant from Brooklyn, the Bloom-Steingut Democratic Party machine in Flatbush. There was Herman Badillo, soon to become the first Latino congressman, borough president of the Bronx. There was a guy named Blumenthal who 2 years later was indicted for political corruption. And the guy who was leading the polls was Mario Biaggi. He was Rudy Giuliani before there was Rudy Giuliani. He was hardcore law and order, but he was an FDR liberal. He had movie star looks. I remember being in Bensonhurst. He walked into this catering hall when he was campaigning in 1973, and the women were swooning over this guy.
Swooning.
Oh, my God. He was the full package. Unbeknownst to anybody, he had to appear before a grand jury about political corruption. And even though he was guilty of the political corruption, you know what they got him on? You got money, but you never reported it to the IRS. You see, the IRS doesn't care if it's ill-gotten gain, if it's drug money. You got to report it. We're not going to rat you out to any other agency, but you got to pay your taxes.
So they say.
He was asked 16 questions in the grand jury that then extrapolated into 30. He took the Fifth Amendment 55 times. And the Southern District leaked it to the press. And Mario Biaggi was, no, I didn't take it 55 times. Of course he did. And that was the end of his ability to run for mayor. He was running both as a Democrat and a conservative, which is like an oxymoron nowadays. So that's why Eric Adams cannot go into a grand jury. So his two attorneys that he's paid a lot of money to keep him out of jail, one guy named McGuire, who used to be head of his corporation counsel, is the son of the former police commissioner for Koch, who never walked a beat. The lawyer police commissioner, McGuire, he sucked. And his son does too. But his son used to work with the U.S. Attorney's Southern District in the Integrity Unit. That's the unit that goes after crooked politicians.
Oh, God.
So Eric gets this subpoena personally in July.
Yeah.
And I think what happened was they delayed dealing with the feds and trying to negotiate a plea because he's dead.
Yeah.
He's a dead man walking.
Not good.
And that's why they leaked it out now. You're not going to play ball. We got you, we got the subpoena. We're going to make you come in and testify before a grand jury. It's over. Mm-hmm. So you better launch a plea bargain, right?
Yeah.
In the meantime, what does Eric Adams do? That's why you can tell he's in trouble. Every town hall meeting he goes, who does he compare himself to? David Dinkins.
I'm David Dinkins, too.
David Dinkins.
You notice how little claps there were? Like, wait, what?
Why would anybody want to be associated with David Dinkins?
He thinks it's a highlight.
Wait. He extrapolates further.
The city was thriving and coming back under David Dinkins. Go look at the records. But they created a narrative that everybody started buying into. His base started buying into the narrative. They started listening to all the noise and started making it seem like David Dinkins didn't inherit a mess.
How crazy is that to compare yourself to one of the worst mayors we've ever had, David Dinkins? Over 2,000 murders a year, 10,000 unsolved shootings, and a guy who rarely went into the outer boroughs except the upcoming U.S. Open in Flushing Meadows. Oh, he was there for every match, and that was the only time he was in Queens.
Well, it certainly explains a lot about New York City.
But you see, his big supporter in his race against me was Michael Bloomberg. You remember that second debate I had with him at Eyewitness Channel 7? Afterwards, he went to the Fortune Society with his son, Jordan.
Yeah, I remember that.
They were honoring the billionaire Bloomberg. Fortune
course.
Society does good work.
Of course they would.
And he gave the introduction to Michael Bloomberg, who had all these Bloombergites supporting Eric Adams. And this is what he said.
That's right.
He said, Michael Bloomberg reminds me of Jesus Christ when he walked over the Sea of Galilee.
That was great.
The only thing that Michael Bloomberg had in common with Jesus Christ is they were both Jews. Other than that, there's no comparison. So you would have thought that Eric Adams would say, I want to be like Mike. Not like Michael Jordan, but Michael Bloomberg.
Yeah.
He says Dinkins because he realizes now he's fighting for his political life in a now larger Democratic primary than any incumbent has ever had. He can depend on only one vote, the African-American vote, and he's hoping by conjuring up the name of David Dinkins that somehow will get him the African-American vote.
That's what he's thinking.
And then meantime, we were told, remember that case that was filed against him for sexual harassment when he was a transit cop? And this woman, black woman, was a transit cop. and they were in the records division of the Transit Police Department, so they both worked overnight. Eric even admitted he was taking stuff from floppy disks and putting it into, new computer form with her. And then she claimed that he sexually harassed her because he was involved with the Guardians, eventually 100 blacks in law enforcement. She said, I'm being denied a promotion. Eric, I need your help. He said, okay, let's go discuss it.
In his car.
West Side Highway. And they pulled over right before you get to Harlem.
Yeah, you know you're in trouble already.
And he basically, according to her, he put her hand on his male member, and he wanted a BJ.
Yeah.
She complained about it. She filed from Florida about it, and they said right away, no, this is a shakedown. But Eric Adams, he hired a celebrity lawyer that is going after her, and we were told, oh, this is all nonsense.
Yeah, right. This Alex Spiro. So he's Adams' attorney. He was retained because the city law department, they said they needed help to ensure they could maximize their existing resources on numerous other matters. So they brought in the big guns, Alex Spiro.
And this woman has claimed now that she can identify 50 people that she had told this story to at the time of his sexual harassment.
Yeah, so as the discovery is going on, and they made the initial claim, okay, this is what he did. Now the questions are pursuing. They're going back and forth. And in her discovery paperwork, she acknowledged that there was 50 separate individuals who she told this to, contemporaneous at the time. She gave months and years, but she didn't give like specific day, like, oh, Tuesday at 7 p.m. So right away, Alex Spiro's like, no, not good enough, ma'am. Not good enough. We need timestamps.
How the hell is she going to remember what time it was?
And it's not like today where you're in your cell phone, like everyone's carrying around a cell phone, like you may have something that, to the point. At a most, maybe you'd write it down later, so you'd have to make a notation of it. But that's a completely ridiculous thing when 50 people heard it around the general time.
So she gives the names of 50 people who knew of this.
Correct.
That doesn't sound like a frivolous lawsuit to me. The hired gun Spiros tries to say, well, you didn't tell us the exact day and time that you confided into them, which is nonsense. I mean, wait a second. Did E. Jean Carroll confide to the court what day she was supposedly raped by Trump? She didn't even remember what year. What about Justice Kavanaugh? Remember when he was going through his hearings and that woman emerged? She couldn't even remember when the so-called sexual assault against her occurred. And Adams was there on the sidelines cheering both.
Yeah, and again, he also is making claims for more details about the alleged assault. So again, that's part of what you do to embarrass sometimes people who are in this situation, right? You want to keep them a little bit quiet, a little ashamed. So no, describe it in more detail. I need more detail. Like, that's a power move.
Let's face it. We thought this was frivolous. There's legs to this.
There's legs.
And in Eric Adams' own words, and many people can account for this in conversations he's had with his supporters, because, I have rats everywhere. People asked Eric, what's the difference between now that you're mayor and when you were borough president? And he says without blinking, well, when I was borough president, I get lucky once a week. I get a BJ. Now I get a BJ every night. This is your mayor, Eric Adams, bragging about that, proud of that. And so when she made that allegation that that's what he wanted, well, you come to your own conclusions. But anyway, we're paying for all this, Michigan. So hopefully this comes to a close sooner rather than later.